Well, here we are again, talking about Jackbox. Ahoy! My name is Melany. I'll be honest, I wasn't expecting this month's video to be yet another Jackbox review, but it seems only around a month after the disaster that was the Jackbox Naughty Pack, Jackbox Games dropped their next game, the Jackbox Survey Scramble. To be completely honest, I'll confess that I had very low expectations going into this game. An entire Jackbox game centered around the idea of survey responses seemed very odd to me, especially considering Jackbox has already done a survey-based game in one of their party packs, Guespionage. And while that game is entertaining enough on its own, it is absolutely never a game my friends and I play solely because we want to play it. It's always a game we play just because we happen to have Party Pack 3 open. So an entire standalone game based on survey responses seemed like a good idea that I just didn't quite have faith in being pulled off well. I cannot stress enough how the past 4 packs really failed to do much for my friends and I, especially packs 10 and Naughty Pack. I actually refunded my copy of Naughty Pack after I finished my video. Like, that's how bad of a pack that was. But despite my worries, I bought the game the other day, I got some friends in the call, and I've gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised. As mentioned earlier, this game works off survey responses. Well, instead of just doing a bunch of surveys while developing the game, Survey Scramble has players on the main menu answer random questions on their devices. Your answers here are then uploaded into Jackbox's servers and will be the survey responses that appear in the game. Needless to say, this is a really clever and good way to go about a survey-based game, as it ensures the answers are always up to date as a form of future-proofing, while also giving the survey responses a source. These answers are utilized in 4 Jackbox game modes. I read somewhere that Jackbox plans to add more game modes down the line in free updates, but I can only review what's currently out right now. If any future game modes are substantial enough to warrant a video discussing them, I can do a follow-up video, but for now, let's jump in. There's 4 modes of play, or I guess technically 5. There's high-low, speed, squares, and bounce. The sort of 5th mode is the tour mode, where you play all 4 modes in a row, and your scores are totaled for an overall winner between the 4 game modes. Let's go over these modes in order, starting with high-low. This is a game mode that challenges you to guess survey responses. The first 2 rounds, you're guessing the most popular responses, then the next 2 are least popular responses, and then the final one is a guessing game on which response is higher on the list. That's the best breakdown I can offer, and while that sounds very basic, that's because it is. High-low is a very basic game, but a fun one. I don't know, I imagine the fun would wear off after several games, but from my experience, it was just a fun little challenge to figure out how our answers would rank. But I will confess sometimes, it felt like a bit of a gamble to figure out what was at the bottom. Also, and this is something we'll see throughout all of the game modes available at launch, but if the topic you're given is weak, then good luck. You may as well just be guessing nonsense. But despite my complaints, this was probably my favorite mode in the game. I guess I could say it's all downhill from here, but the other modes are at the very least interesting as well. This is a really simple mode, but I see the appeal for people in this one. A full game of this goes on for only about 5 minutes, so I can see this being a fun little distraction for large groups of people. The second mode of this game is Speed, and it's easily the worst one. You want to know how to play this one? Just make guesses as fast as possible. That's it. Okay, I suppose I'm being a little hyperbolic, but not by much. In this mode, all players play simultaneously and have to just guess the most popular answers in a survey prompt as fast as possible. The more popular an answer, the more points you get. If someone got your guessed answer before you get nothing. Each answer submitted that is actually on the list and hasn't been counted already will increase the time limit, and the game ends when time runs out, with the winner being determined by whoever scored the most amount of points. That's literally it. This game sucks. This just isn't a good idea for a game. Oftentimes when you're just in a mad dash to make wild guesses for the prompt, you're just typing in anything and everything, and very often, we ran into an issue where the game wouldn't take our answers at all. Like, it just wasn't an answer on the scale of answers to guess, from which really slowed the game down and took the wind out of the game. Not to mention, the very concept of this game, just being rapidly guessing random shit, is just the lamest and most shallow concept for a game mode ever. The lowest point of this game by a long shot. Squares. This is easily the most complicated game of the lot, but one of the better ones. Players are split into 2 teams and are faced with a 3x3 grid where the squares are made up by answers ranked within a set range. Each team takes turns guessing answers for the topic. For a demonstrative example, say the topic is Disneyland words you might see on a sign. Say one of the squares is a 1 to 2 range square. Your team guesses magic, and they get the answer that's ranked 2. That square is now claimed by that team, but it can be stolen by the other team if they get an answer ranked higher, like the first ranked answer, Mickey. Then, a square gets locked into the team's ownership if they guess the highest ranking of that square. To win, your team needs to get 3 in a row. It's not a perfect game mode, but one of my favorites. There is a tool used for players within teams to offer suggestions, but in my experience, I found it to be less than helpful. But high marks for this game, good stuff. Finally, we have Bounce. This is trivia meets breakout. Players are broken up into teams and have to use the popularity scale of a topic as the paddle for a traditional game of breakout or pong. Players on teams take turns submitting words to move the paddle across the scale to keep the ball bouncing. The team that's first to get 5 points wins. For example, with the topic of airplane activities, you can guess work to catch the ball towards the center of the screen. Then, a player on the other team goes, and they can suggest P to keep the bounce going. Every time the ball hits the paddle, the game speeds up. If the bounce streak ends, the team that wasn't responsible for it gains a point. This is a really creative idea that left my group absolutely split. On one hand, this is a really creative idea that I enjoyed a lot. Like, this is a really cute idea that I found really cool despite its simplicity. But on the other hand, there is certainly a problem with how this functions as an actual game. While I had my fun, this game just feels really poorly thought out. After more than a few bounces, the game is just far too fast for the game to realistically keep going. Oftentimes while playing, a team gets lucky and a response paddle is already at the right place at the right time, and you don't even have to do anything for that turn. There is a counterbalance to this where, after each reuse, the paddle shrinks, but that still doesn't add much to solve this occurrence because using this tactic, you can still more than likely score a point. Mind you, as with other games, this goes on for only about 5 minutes. Also, when it's not your turn, your interactivity with your team is really lame. All you can do is suggest words for your team to use when it's someone's turn, which is really unhelpful, and doesn't feel like it works out well in execution. Also, just like all of the other games before, if you get a crappy topic, then you're just honestly screwed and won't have a ton of fun. But regardless, those were the 4 game modes available at launch for the Jackbox Survey Scramble. This is a breath of fresh air for the Jackbox franchise, and a very solid game, while also standing as the foundation for more. No question, this single game was better than most of the last 2 packs. In other notes unrelated to the actual game modes themselves, I really loved the presentation for this game. I thought it was kind of weird at first, and sort of reminded me of Quicksort, one of my personal least favorite games from Jackbox, but they go in an interesting direction. There's this fun background made up of cubes with an ominous but fun vibe to it. The gameplay UI looks nice too and functions really nicely. The music for this game is also really lovely, like most music from Jackbox. I especially found the credits theme to be a really lovely ditty with some mildly amusing lyrics. I do sort of wish this Jackbox game had a host of some kind beyond a narrator just explaining things, but it's by no means whatsoever the end of the world. Also, a nice quality of life addition to this game is that there's just one room code for the whole game, and once in, players can vote on game modes and select game modes from their device. I really wish they would just add this feature to future party packs. But as an overall game, let's discuss my final thoughts. Is this a bad game? No, I think this is a fine enough little game. It's one of the weaker games from Jackbox, and some of the core gameplay feels kinda weak. A lot of these games can get really strongly bogged down by a weak prompt that just leaves the players blindly guessing. That is a massive flaw to this game, but for a game that has such a unique concept and execution, I found it to be bearable. Though I will say, if you're buying this game, buy for the content that's actually available at launch. Don't buy on the promise that Jackbox is going to add more to this game, because quite frankly, I really don't see a game like this being able to add modes that are going to be dramatically better than the offerings we've seen today. Also, who knows if that added content is even going to be worth a damn. With everything said and done, this is a fine Jackbox game. This feels like the kind of game where if someone thinks they'll have a nice time with it, then they probably will. But if they don't think they'll enjoy it, then they probably won't. Unlike Naughty Pack, I don't see myself refunding this game. I enjoyed this game enough to think I'll probably be able to get some enjoyment out of it following this video. But I can't say this is the greatest thing ever despite that. In terms of adding this to my Jackbox ranking, I'm putting this one below Joke Boat, but above Blatherround, at the number 27 slot. And that wraps up what I have to say here about this game. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you all have a lovely day, and hopefully I'll even see you next time. Bye bye!